Welcome back to a new episode of Inclusion Starts Now. Before we get to the conversation today, I want to talk about the word inclusion. For me, the definition of inclusion is that people feel they are a part of their chosen community, whether that be at school, at their job, their circle of friends, etc. And that no person should feel excluded because of an accommodation they need or communication style they have, and so on. One way that I practice being inclusive is by opening up my own way of thinking to others' perspectives. Today's episode is a conversation about politics. If you have been trying to avoid politics at all or feeling any sort of anxiety or fear, I'd like you to tread lightly into this episode. Today, you'll be hearing a conversation I had with Wes from Disabled Land. Wes is a self advocate who is here to explain why, for him, people who voted for Trump is a vote against disabled people's rights. This is a heavy topic, and some examples could be triggering to some and might feel like fake news to others. As a person who wants to increase inclusive practices, I want this to be a safe space for everyone to be heard. If you have comments on what was said on this episode, I'd love to continue this conversation with you. As an ally, I will forever give a safe space for disabled people to have a voice. I don't have to agree with everything Wes said to find common ground, have a good discussion, and to gain more understanding of how people in minority groups feel with this recent election. As someone who's also reflecting on how this recent election is making me feel, I know that continuing the conversation and is what is most important now. Keep educating, keep discussing, and most importantly, keep learning.
I say let's do an introduction first. I know you've been on my podcast before, but for anybody who is new here, how about you introduce yourself?
I am Wes Harkness, also known as Wes of Disabled Land. I am the humble host of the Disabled Land podcast. You can find it pretty much, I'm assuming anywhere you can get any of the platforms that you get this podcast that you're listening to now. Um, I believe it's Inclusion Starts Now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know I don't have it in my name like you do. That's smart. Wes of Disabled Land. What I really like about your podcast is the music at the beginning. Like I do feel like I'm
Yeah.
going to Disneyland.
I am very conceptual. It's gotten me in some trouble. I'm very themey. When I started to do it, I've got that creative side of me. When I started to do it, I didn't want to just drop like a regular podcast. And I've seen it's getting better now, but some of the disability podcasts I was listening to begin with, they were just very disability trauma dump or whatever, and it wasn't as fun a listen as what I thought it should be. So
Yeah.
I've tried to make mine fun and then also ended up making some enemies doing that in the process. It's good. And when I get the second podcast off the ground, it's going to be relatively themed as well. So
Oh, cool. Well, I didn't know you're doing a second podcast. That's awesome.
yeah, I haven't started recording yet. I'm hoping to start recording in February for a March or April release.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's just going to be like a standard film coverage podcast, and hopefully that'll happen. But
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So it's not going to be a political conversation podcast
well, it'll be
because
a
I feel like
political.
you have a lot of things to say.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely still going to be a political um podcast, but it's not going to be as much of a disability niche podcast. Obviously, that will still come up because I am disabled. That is part of the deal with me. But I just found that with disabled land, it is difficult of there's a lot of other things I want to talk about, and there's a lot of other people I want to talk to. And trying to shoehorn things into the disability conversation doesn't always work. And I can be doing, 6 or 7 episodes of Disabled Land a month where a bunch of things are shoehorned in and I lose my main audience because, I'm making them listen to like this something about some weird television show from the 80s or I can just start a second podcast and use both to promote each other. So,
Yeah, that works. Um, so we are here because we wanted to talk about politics. And I've gotten to interview a couple of people talking about the Department of Education, which of course is like a concern with the new administration. Um, and I have to say it did kind of comfort me that it's not like, Trump said it, but it's not like something that can just happen right away. And it's not like but I guess I would like to hear your opinion.
um,
Let's like start small and see where we go.
okay. There has been, first of all, I need to say that I agreed to do this episode almost a month ago. And it was because I'm Canadian. A lot of the disabled Americans that would be on this podcast usually, like Cassidy Huff, our mutual friend Cassidy Huff, were just tired. A lot of them went into hiding. Some of them just dropped their socials altogether and left. Um, and some of them are still on Blue Sky, but it was just we were mad, we were tired, and we had never felt less seen or less listened to. Just of really not that the Democrats were showing the greatest platform in the world or anything like that, but really this is what you would rather go for. And we were hearing the arguments of, oh, he's going to make eggs cheaper, throughout the campaign. Oh, he's going to bring the price of groceries, he's going to bring the groceries down. And we knew he wasn't. We Disabled people are pretty much always the political version of the canary in the coal mine. Whatever is going to happen to the rest of society at large typically starts to hit the disability community first. So
Interesting. I've never heard that.
a lot, I'm probably the only one that says it quite that way. But it really is whatever affects, we are looking at the fires in Los Angeles right now.
Hmm.
I just turned off a live stream to do this. I've been like tuned into it. Evacuations come, it is the disabled, whether elderly disabled or just disabled people, that are typically the first to be left behind, either accidentally or, with not necessarily with intent, but it is what happens to the rest of society tends to happen to us first and tends to happen to us worst. Um, if you see bad things happening to the disability community, there's a good chance that is going to start to affect you eventually. Famously, the campaigns that Adolf Hitler did to wipe out the Jews started with the disabled people. They were the first that were going into were being gassed. They started there because it was the gateway drug to genocide. They were able to do it.
Uh-huh.
Um, Trump has and will admit to having a lot of Hitler vibes. And now I say, and people, I always have to correct here. This is not a defense or a fan of Adolf Hitler. The man was an absolute monster. I love the fact that he cowardly shot himself in the head when he lost his war. Um, I believe Trump to be more malicious. I believe Trump to be less intelligent, less educated, and have less of an actual plan. He just says things. And you can't tell whether the things he is going to say are things he are actually going to do, or things that he could do or won't do. Like he spent the last month talking about invading Canada, annexing Canada, calling my prime minister a governor of the 51st state of America. These are not the actions of a well man. So to say when he's saying things about the disability community, or you hear secondhand things about him saying, "Oh, well, you're disabled, my disabled nephew should just be allowed to die so my brother can move to Florida." We don't assume that that is a lie because we've heard equally bad things come out of his mouth.
Yeah.
So we don't, there is talk of programs like SSI, and then once again, I'm Canadian. I don't know all this stuff perfectly. I've been
And
talking to a lot of Americans
SSI,
like,
you're talking about Social Security
yeah,
income?
the social, yeah, that I know that it's the Social Security, but I don't know the way everything works there. I know that cuts to that and messing with that from a
Yeah.
man like Trump is not going to be a good thing for disabled people. Like this is not a man that thinks about putting others first, is the issue that we have.
Um, Before we move on, for Social Security income, just to give some information, I would not say I'm the expert on this, but at
Yeah,
one point I did work with adults, and helping them get jobs, or adults who are deaf blind, and helping them get jobs. And it was a really like fine line of the amount you get from SSI is a pretty small amount. And so, you're trying to work to basically cover like the other half of an income, but you don't
yeah,
want to make too much money because then you will then lose the SSI,
yeah,
and then you're back again to like not being able to afford rent. Um, so
yeah.
I do have to say cutting from it is not helpful unless there is some other form of support that would be like helping people in some way,
Yes.
because I do know what I've heard a lot with the problem of like giving people money like SSI. It's like and what I'm saying from my Republican people that I know is that it's like the whole government handout argument of like if you're giving people money, then what's the incentive to like go get a job? And then me seeing like, well, they're only working to get to a certain amount so they can still basically like have these two sources of income. But it's like, the second they hit a little over this, and it was, I mean, it was a very small amount. Whatever the money was, I remember thinking like, that doesn't even cover my mortgage. Like that doesn't cover living expenses.
If every job was if every job for everyone, able-bodied or otherwise, was governmentally forced to pay a living wage, if rent was governmentally enforced to be reasonable, um, like most we're at a point most able-bodied people can't make ends meet. Most
Mhm.
able-bodied people, yeah, here we're worse there, but here as well. Everyone is struggling. You then have a thing of once you bring disability into it, okay, cool. You want all disabled people to work, but you're not making buildings accessible. You're not giving the things they need to work. You're making it easier for us to be fired or paid less because we're disabled. I can work. I can't work under the demands of what current capitalism is because after a month of that, my body will like I do background work and for film and television. I physically can go and work 12-hour days, 5, 6 days a week for 2, 3 weeks in a row. I can force myself to do that. But when that is done, I'm not going to do anything for 2 or 3 weeks. So have me trying to force my body to work a 40-hour work week to still have trouble paying rent. Why would anybody want to do that, able-bodied, disabled, or otherwise?
Yeah.
You're not, it's, and capitalism is a huge problem, but under this administration, capitalism is going to be an even larger problem. And once again, canary in a coal mine, you're going to see a lot fewer disabled people getting hired, or they're going to be getting hired for less, or it's going to be easier to fire them, or it's going to become harder for us to get accommodations. I mean, there's good reason to believe that even the Americans with Disabilities Act is going to be under threat
Yeah.
because you have a group of people in power that don't care about basic human
Well,
decency.
do you feel like they're going to actually do something to ADA or like try to take it away? Because I feel like that's just not something like I'm not quite sure if I feel like that's I haven't really heard his entire Project 25 plan, but is ADA a part of that?
Um,
Oh, which by the way, ADA is the American Disabilities Act,
yeah,
which has not been changed in a long time.
yeah,
It's from 1971, 4,
yeah.
9.
I have not read the whole project either. I have read, the highlights and the cliff notes of it. I know it is pretty much not good for anyone who is not, rich and white. But once again, we don't know what he can do because this is not a normal president. This man is right now, as of yesterday, officially, completely a felon. Your American court system has said this. Donald Trump is a convicted felon. Donald Trump should not have even been eligible to run for president. But it happened. This man has not had to follow the rules. And this time, unlike the last time Trump was in charge, the last time Trump was in charge, he had all, you may remember the chaos of he brought in regular political insiders, people who had been previous assistants to presidents. He brought in professionals that knew what they were doing, that knew how to run a government, that knew how government works. And he was firing them often throughout his administration because they couldn't work with him. That's not what he's doing this time. I've heard people talk about arguers like, oh, well, the Democrats were just going to put George Soros in charge. Well, you traded George Soros for Elon Musk. We're mad because we know that he does not respect disabled people. It's right there in his press conference. You can watch it. It is right there for the world to see when he mocks the disabled journalist. Um, so we believe him when he allegedly said that, that his disabled nephew should just be allowed to die. We believe that is his opinion of disabled people because we have no reason not to. Oh, and also, if you respect trans people and you voted Trump, I'm sorry, you don't respect trans people because he said throughout his campaign and even now exactly how he is going to do trans people. The horrible things he has said, the allegations of, and this is what I mean about not a mentally well man, the allegations he has made, and I'm sorry, I don't know how else to say it. The allegations he has come out and made of, oh, well, they're doing gender reassignment surgeries at schools.
Yeah.
Kayla, you've worked in schools. You know how schools work. Can these places fund surgical wings? I know people that have transitioned. I know what that involves.
Yes. And
You're not going to school and coming back 6 hours later a different,
yeah.
like, no, it
Yeah,
is,
I would say as a teacher, you can't even take a splinter out of a child. You are not allowed to give them any sort of medicine, ibuprofen, a kid's Flintstone vitamin.
yeah,
You are not allowed to do anything without a call to the parent. It's ridiculous. But I wanted to actually ask, because I do know, I have heard a lot of like all of what you've said about Trump and the ableism that he seems to protrude, but I don't actually know the Democrats' stance on. I do remember that there was an interview with Kamala where she basically said like, she's for gender affirming care, but made it very like neutral. And I'm assuming she's
yeah.
doing that because I really do feel like a lot of Americans don't understand transgender people.
No, they
Um,
don't.
which is unfortunate because for how many people are transgender in this world, it feels like it is a very big topic. That is that just,
Okay,
that's a whole other
yeah.
episode, but
Let,
I
let, let,
do
let, yeah, let me see,
Democrats.
let me say straight out. The Democrats had huge problems. A lot has come out of like Biden's advisors saying, okay, no, Joe can't deal with this today. And these are his own people. These aren't like mega people going and saying atrocious shit like they always say. Um, Kamala Harris was not, you know, the perfect candidate in the perfect world. America is not at the point where they're going to get the perfect candidate in the perfect world. Your system is not set up for someone like that to get control, or Bernie Sanders probably would have been your president for the last 30 years. Let's get to the DOE for a minute because you want to
Okay.
talk DOE.
Yeah.
This is, well, I don't completely understand everything the Department of Education does. I've done some research for other podcasts and I've talked with other disabled people and I have talked with you and I listened to your episode on the DOE. The DOE, in theory, could go away. You could, in theory, take that Department of Education away, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, except for giving that power to the states to do whatever they want with education without any rules or regulations. That is not going to work well for disabled people because they are not going to spend that money on disabled people unless they absolutely have to. So a lot of the IEP care and that, it's really going to depend on what state you go to. As far as any kid that is not gender conforming, it is not going to go well for them. You can see examples of this, Florida, where they have also, been trying to get rid of any woke ideas like teaching that slavery was a thing. The big problem with cutting the DOE is, and this is a conservative playbook all around the world. It is happening in my province of Ontario right now and other provinces in Canada of, and I will give you an example. Our province is run by a man named Doug Ford. We had a science museum in Toronto, Ontario, called, I think, oh God, I can't remember the name of it now because things just move so quickly now. But it was a science museum. It was like the Ontario Science Center. That's what it was. The Science Center was a provincial program, government program. It was underfunded and underfunded and underfunded for many, many years. Really, it was underfunded before that, but even worse. Go. They then did an assessment of the building, decided suddenly needed too many repairs because they hadn't done any repairs on it in years. Decided it was broken, decided to close it. Now that piece of land is becoming housing development, which was the plan all along because Doug Ford is real big on housing developments. So the playbook is, and you're going to see this a lot in the American education system, especially if the DOE goes away, of they systematically underfund, cut, make the public service as bad as it can possibly be. So that they can then turn around and say, look, this system is broken. Public education does not work. So then they can privatize it and they can bring in the vouchers or whatever. But then that gives them considerably more control into how they educate and who they educate, because the private schools may not necessarily have to follow the same rules that the public schools did. And the more money you can spend to get your child into the better private school, the more your child will get a proper education. This is the way it's going to work with a lot of, and you'll see it over the next 4 years. You'll see a lot of things that used to be public, from your post office to your local school to many other things. Just watch. You will see a lot of things. It will be, oh no, that's broken. That doesn't work anymore. We're going to bring private sector in, and the private sector will do it. Your whole healthcare system is based on this.
Man, okay, you've said a lot of things and I kept wanting to comment on things and I was just so hardcore listening. To talk about like education, because that's like where I would say I have the most experience
No,
in.
absolutely.
Um, so talking about like trying to privatize public school, like I guess I don't I don't know if I'm fully sold on that's like what the goal is. I mean, I can see them making like kind of creating, I mean, public schools already like teachers struggle to have a salary. Like teachers don't even get paid the out like the hours that they're like supposed to be there is just like not doable at all to get anything done. Um, and I don't know. I mean, it's the my last year's teaching and even now still outside of the classroom, like gosh, I'm just I don't know if I'm fully sold on that idea that they're trying to totally get rid of public school to like get everyone to pay because it's just I don't think a lot of America could pay for their children to be in private school or they would. I mean, I kind of feel like already that's how
Bingo,
people
Kayla.
feel. But I don't see how the government can like take away public schools in general. I mean, yeah, they might make it worse, but I think then people are just going to have to struggle with it being worse. Like, I think most people can't afford private school.
Exactly. Most people can't afford public school or private school. So what happens to those kids? Once again, don't, and I get that I am sounding like a huge alarmist here, but don't assume that this government is going to work with the same playbook that any government you have had before is going to work by.
So I do feel like you are talking a lot about like very extreme MAGA people. And I have to say, I mean, I of course I do know a couple, but most of the people I know who voted for Trump, I would say that they don't agree with the majority of what you're saying as like,
Oh, I know they don't.
or not that they don't agree. Like I would say that they would agree that they're like, no, we don't want public school to go away. Like, I don't, I'm not even really quite sure how to say this, but it feels like sometimes when I'm talking to people that I know who are very MAGA, like it feels like you're the very opposite side, but still like I like I don't want to say like a conspiracy theory, but some of these, and don't get me wrong, I've heard the Hitler comparison, and I see that, and I like it's not that I don't see that it's a problem. It does also feel very extreme onto the other side. Like I don't know if I necessarily believe that all of that is going to happen, and it feels like on both ends there's like these really scare tactics that I'm like. But I know, I mean, how many people like for Germany, like the Holocaust, for all of that, we're
Well,
like,
like
oh, that's not going to happen, and then it does. So
we're
I definitely don't want to say like it won't happen, but I want to say that a lot of the people I know who voted for Trump, who are Republicans, would not say that this is going to happen, and they would say
oh,
like
of course they
it's
wouldn't.
getting a lot of light, like it's getting a lot of attention and I mean, and I have to say, like, even though I know Trump, I would not say is like an advocate for disabled people. I do feel like the couple of things that he's done have been very amplified. And I really don't think that the disabled community is something he's even really thinking about, which is a problem in a different way. Like, I don't think he's actively attacking disabled people, other than the few things that he said that are just extremely ableist, and he's just very uneducated about it.
Mhm.
But because because like I mean we know people who have disabled people in their life that voted for Trump and they would not think that their vote was like a vote against disabled people. So do you want
No,
to can you talk about that a little bit?
um, I have no sympathy for those people and okay, I'm gonna say this. A conspiracy theory is that there are Jewish space lasers being used to start the fires in California. A conspiracy theory is that Somali immigrants were eating the cats and the dogs of their neighborhoods, and I believe it was Ohio.
Hmm.
Um, that is a conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory of a government that is highly capitalist, highly only out for the 1%. who has already reneged on the simplest promise of keeping eggs cheaper while bragging about wanting to take over Greenland. The things that have come out of this man's mouth on a daily basis over the years, um, I don't understand. Like we know a mutual that voted for him and spoke about good Christian values and family values and things like that. This is a man who openly in front of cameras knew he was being recorded, spoke about forcibly kissing women and grabbing them by the genitals. This was before the first time he was
Yeah.
elected, who openly bragged about when he was running his beauty pageants of openly spoke about being not a hidden camera, nothing. Bragged about being able to walk in while the young women were changing because you can just do that kind of thing in his position.
But wouldn't a Christian person believe that people can then, get forgiven for their sins and change as people? Because that was a long time ago. And he has not said anything about
Have
grabbing
you
people's
have
genitals within the last
have
couple of years that I know about.
Have you seen anything out of this man that honestly, I understand that you're trying to devil's advocate here. I really do. And I respect that because that is what you try to do. But have you seen anything to make you think that this man has changed in any way but possibly worse over the last 8 years?
Um, well, I would just say it has changed in general. Like, I mean, no, I could very much confidently say, like, I do not support him. But so there was this meme that came out after he won the first election, and it was like hoping that your president's going to fail is like, or no, it's like, why would you hope that your president fails? That's like hoping that your pilot can't land the plane. It was something like it compared it to that, where it's like, this the election did not go how I wanted it to go. And instead of me like telling people like you're an idiot to vote for Trump, it's more like, okay, well then what can I do to make sure that my community is going to have the values that I find very important? Um, and I also have especially with the first election, I went through like a women's march. And there were signs like making fun of Trump's hands and like his
Oh
skin.
no,
And I
I
was just
agree.
like, but why are we bullying back? Like, haven't we said like two wrongs don't make a right? So if he's gonna bully, why are we just gonna sit there and like make fun of his appearance when like that's like he's treating people poorly based off of like their background or appearance. I mean, really, this him winning again was very shocking to me, and it definitely made me like, okay, I'm gonna get more involved in the areas that I can get involved in. Um, and I'm really focusing on getting involved with my school board in my own community. But that being said, when I talk to people who vote for him, I mean, those are the stories that I do feel like liberal media does like, show more. Um, that's like not what they're seeing. And so I do also
Oh, I
see a
know
lot
it's
of like
not what
what
they're saying.
I mean, even the fires. I had a Republican, they're not really family, but like they're, I don't know, kind of
Yeah.
family. Um, they posted this whole thing about how a lot of the fires are because of like DEI, because the DEI hire for the LA Fire Department, and which is obviously ridiculous because that is so she's a woman and she identifies as LGBTQ.
Yeah.
And she also has like 30 years as like she has just as much background in being like she has just as much qualifiers to be in the position that she's in, but because she is a woman and LGBTQ, identifies as LGBTQ, people are like, oh, well, this wouldn't have happened if there wasn't like a DEI hire. And they're talking about all those. It's like, I guess, interesting to see both sides, which I get to a lot, to see
Yeah.
the different kinds of media that is like being portrayed, because that I feel like is another really extreme one.
And the hilarious thing about the DEI firefighters is the problem. They'll have a problem with that. They don't have a problem with the fact that California is using prisoners being paid
Yeah.
$6 a day to fight the fires. They don't
And I
have a
heard it's
problem with
like
that
30%. It's like 30% of the firefighters are prisoners who are getting
yeah,
paid very, very little. And then who most of them, if they do get out of jail, they cannot be a firefighter because they have had spent time in jail, which is
because they're
crazy.
convicted felons, Kayla.
Yeah,
A convicted felon cannot vote in your country, but a convicted felon is
I
about to
know.
walk into the White House for a second time. I know a lot of people in these marginalized communities that are, you know, deeply between the disability community, between my friends who are people of color, between my friends who are gender non-conforming in whatever way, or LGBTQ plus. Um, what it comes down to is the reason we are mad at these people that voted Trump for whatever reason they voted Trump is it's not just that we are mad, it's that we have seen history, we have seen the history of the way these things go. And we can't, if we don't want to be around you anymore, it's because we can't trust you anymore.
Yeah.
Like, if you like that, I can't call her a friend anymore, but that mutual you and I used to have,
Hmm.
that I went and I read her whole full statement about why she voted that way and had gone to the rally before and the things she like wrote about Trump. I cannot trust her anymore. I cannot trust her to keep me sit. I would not feel safe around her if I was any member being disabled or any of these other groups because there is so much, and I try not to say drink the Kool-Aid anymore because the Kool-Aid, it turned out, was actually forced on people. That is an urban myth from the Jonestown thing.
Oh my
But
gosh, I just read that book about
she,
cults.
she
But
but
anyways, that's another
like
topic.
the people that voted Trump, whether we know whether they're hardcore MAGA or not, or just say that they voted Trump, we can't trust anymore that if we have if we say we have a trans child, we can no longer trust that if Trump comes out and says, I want you to report all the trans children that you know, we can't trust you to not pick up the phone and call because you have proven that you will believe what he's selling. If we know, if we have friends or if we ourselves are undocumented workers in America, we can't trust you not to turn us in no matter how badly good or bad that might go for us, whether or not it is simply being deported or sent to a camp, because you have proven that you believe that, people are eating your cats and dogs. You will retweet that. You will reshare that sort of thing. You will simply deny that he ever said it or it was taken out of context. For crying out loud, he said it during a debate. That footage is from the debate. There is no fakery or forgery there or creative editing. He said it right there. They are eating your cats, they are eating
Yes.
your dogs.
So,
So how do we trust you at this point to keep us, even if you decide down the road, oh no, Trump's gone too far? How do we ever trust you to actually do anything about it? We can't. And that is why we want nothing to do with these people anymore. It's a bridge too
yeah.
far.
Yeah. And I mean, I think part of the issue is that we have this two-party system that basically, I mean, so like for example, Republicans who might not agree with people who are trans or who might not be for like letting immigrants over. Like I feel like there are some people that have just these few values that the Republican candidate like kind of has to have. And that is like why they vote. Like, because I mean, I know people who have said they're like, Trump's an idiot, but he's the Republican candidate and he's going to vote for the things that I want in office. even though they don't agree with everything, most of the things that he says, they're voting for him because he is
And
like a
that,
Republican candidate.
and I just want to push on that, that even with that narrative, even just with that narrative, if you think just that narrative itself, even if you don't want to get into any of the extreme stuff, if you think that isn't enough for some people to not trust you to put their right to exist, like second to, your cheap eggs or whatever, ask any gay person that lived through the AIDS crisis under Ronald Reagan whether or not those political beliefs can be used to absolutely destroy a person or a group or a community. And then look at how much more amplified Trump is.
And I try to flip it on myself to think like what would the Democrat candidate have to be like for me to not want to vote for them? Because like when I remember when Bernie Sanders was running that I was like, I mean, he sounded great, but I was just like, I can't. And I think a lot of people felt this way that they were like, I can't throw away my vote because he's a third party. He's not going to win. And it was just too scary to be like,
Well, yeah, yeah, no,
like
the
you kind
third,
of have to be Democrat or Republican,
yeah, the
but
third party candidate thing in
it's
your
a
area
game, it feels
is
like.
it. The third party candidate thing in America is impossible. It is going to be so hard for that to ever happen without an actual revolution to begin with, because you would have to change your entire election system.
Yeah. Which I'm on board for. I'm on board to change
Oh,
it in a way that we vote for candidates and we vote for policies, and there is not a party that you're supposed to, really be on. But that's a whole, who knows what's going to happen there.
I want to say straight out, I would love nothing more than to be absolutely wrong, simply
Yeah.
because I know I am not going to sit here and gloat while people are being pushed into camps and the ADA goes away and you are having to, go to your government once a month to make sure that you're not pregnant. I would love nothing more than for none of that to happen. I don't want to see you guys, because it'll slowly take my country with it. I don't want to see America go back 200 years or even 60 years. I genuinely do not. I say the things I say because there is nothing I have been shown that doesn't make me think that that is a real possibility.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to gloat about it. I'm not going to be happy about it. I just, for one thing, is Trump is the most prolific liar I have ever seen. He lies like it's his first language. So when he says, this is my last election, I don't believe that. Unless he was going to just move to take whatever money he had left, whatever grift he had left, and move to Saudi Arabia. Um, to get out of the country, because it is pretty clear a lot of what he did deciding to become president, because he didn't seem to enjoy it the first time, was to stay out of prison. Like, he will find a way to pardon himself. He will get out of all his crime drama thing. He will either retire it away and just let everyone else do the work and he will be a figurehead, or he will go until he either passes or he's forced out. Do I guarantee there will be an election in 4 years? I don't know that there will be. And even at that point, they will have had so much time to push things in their favor. I don't know that it'll be a fair one. I try to go in this from things that have legitimately come out of his mouth and come out of the mouths of the people that are in his inner circle, and then come out of the mouths of the people that I'm seeing that voted for him. It is, I don't know how it's going to go. I'm just trying to get people understand that we are in very, very dangerous times. California is on fire right now. If this was a month from now, it is highly questionable whether or not California would be getting the help from the federal government that it is currently getting. You can argue that they're not getting enough right now, and they're probably not, they may not be, but once again, even people that worked under Trump in his first administration have said that, like, we had to tell him it's people in Orange County, California voted for you just to get him to send funding there the last time there were fires when he was president. He is psychologically, he is a very vindictive man, a very petty man on top of everything else. And large portions of this country have been trying to put your country have been trying to put him in prison for the last 4 years. And he's now back in the White House. He is, I don't believe that he's in it for public service. I believe he is in it for him in a way that, you can say, oh, well, Obama goes and does a speaking tour after he retires and makes, a shitload of money or whatever. This is a man that is selling Bibles while he is in the White House. This is a man that is starting crypto coin and like little commemorative coins and things while he's in the White House. And it's not a federally funded thing. It is his personal bank account that this money is going to.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe that anybody who is trying to be president, there has to be like some narcissism to
Oh, there has to be. You have to have
I mean,
some level of a God complex to want
and you
that job.
yeah, you have to be so confident in what you're doing because you are getting, I mean, on either side, millions of people against you. Um, and to still go out and talk and preach what you want to preach, I would love for the brains of people who have been president to be studied next to like just the average worker, like
Yeah.
low income person or middle class or whatever. I would love to see the different brain studies of how they interact, like how their brain interacts with fear or threat or happiness or whatever. Like I would, and I've thought about this a lot of like, why do I do what I do? Um, and all I can really say is it's probably just all the human connection and the studies behind that, that everybody really wants human
Yeah.
connection. But I don't know why I seem to want it in like to to my understanding in a more positive way to like be inclusive and diverse and all that.
And
Because I don't
see,
know, I feel like change brings so much good stuff. So I've always
they,
really liked change and different and trying to figure out the new thing,
yeah,
which, yeah. So maybe my brain can be studied too. I'd like that.
because you're not constantly terrified about being replaced.
Yeah. I mean, I
Like
am white, straight.
one of the conspiracies they deeply believe in is replacement theory of, because Elon pushes that a lot too, of white people are just going to be slowly pushed out and pretty soon there won't be white people anymore. And it's or what they're really terrified about is being treated like you'll hear the joke a lot about a homophobic man is really just terrified of being treated the way he treats women.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think the
the
replacement theory, I think that's spot on. Because
Yeah, like
I mean, like
they're
with
terrified of
DEI,
being
that's what everyone
yeah,
is when they're like, oh, so you want to focus on hiring more people of color. So like, what about me? And it's like, you can still go for the position. And if you are the best candidate, like you might get the position still. Like it's just, it's interesting because yes, I do know
but
some like
they don't
white
believe that.
Republicans
Yeah,
that
they don't believe that. Like they don't believe
oh
it
yeah,
would
no,
like
I know.
because they have done worked so hard over the years to make it not fair in their favor that they can't possibly conceive that if the other side gets equal control, that they are not going to be punished for the actions of the past. It is ultimately the fear of being treated the way you have treated people, is what so many of them are afraid of.
Yeah. Yep.
And can I just
And
say
yeah.
I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
one last thing because I know you're gonna want to do the tarot card thing soon and that, and
Yes.
we probably should wrap so that you're not buried in editing. But I don't know how long we've been going. So can I just say that I don't know if Robert F. Kennedy is going to get the position that he wants to get. I don't know if like that's going to be a bridge too far. But can we at least agree on some level of basic sanity and common sense that the polio vaccine is a good thing, that making America great again does not mean bringing back polio.
Yeah.
Because that is the other
Yeah.
big thing.
Yeah.
When was America great?
Yes.
Like
I
what are you calling it? When is America when you say make America great again? Pinpoint to me what point in history you want to go back to. Because I guarantee you it wasn't great for everyone.
yes, I have heard that. I definitely agree that and I think what we just need to as a society learn is that people are just constantly like we're constantly changing and there are going to be new identities, there are going to be like new genders. Like just I don't know why people are like so upset that someone can identify differently as you and they can also like, coexist. And vaccines, again, that is like a whole topic. I am for vaccines. If people really don't want to take vaccines, I mean, I guess I'm vaccinated and my family is, so I guess that's just something you guys are gonna have to deal with as the unvaccinated. Um, yeah, but I do know a lot of people who are against vaccinations and in science. And yeah, it's sad.
Because
And
our children have never been sicker, Kayla. Our children have never been sicker.
yeah, no, I mean, I think one of my favorites, I'm in a lot of mom groups on Facebook, and there's always, some random person who will comment and just be like, there's this measles outbreak happening. We don't get vaccines. Like, what are ways that I can protect my kids? And so many people will be like, oh, yeah, there's a vaccine for that. Like, oh, well, you should get them vaccinated. And
Because
I
it's
mean, yeah,
true. You know why there's a measles outbreak. Because you fools didn't vaccinate your children. Because even though they don't cause autism, you think autism is the worst thing in the world, so you would rather your child get measles and die. I
yeah,
I don't, and I'm sorry, I can't placate these people anymore. I can't just like pat them on the head and say, after 5 years of COVID, after staring possible bird flu into the face, I can't just pat these people on the head anymore and say, it's okay for you to have your wacky beliefs. You are killing people.
yeah. There's a great chapter in Think Again by Adam Grant where they talk about this, and it's a doctor who talks to anti-vaxxers and basically changes their minds, but it is like a conversation, and they leave the conversation like respectfully, but because of that, usually they are more open to a different way of thinking than how they're thinking. Um, and I think it's really hard. I think it's really hard on either side because even when I talk to people, and I mean, I grew up with parents on either side of the parties, so I think that's been really helpful for me, just like as a human growing up, hearing both sides all the time because it made me more reflective. Like I don't know, it's made me really reflective on either side. So I think these conversations are so important to have and to continue happening. I think the most dangerous thing we can do is just like shut people off that don't share our same thoughts because like okay, actually recently on Christmas, um, I was hanging out with my neighbors and some of them did vote for Trump. And one of us, we talked for like 4 hours about politics. And and it was extremely respectful. And some of it was just like some of his own values in life. But we were able to leave the conversation where we both were like, I feel like we both learned something from the other person's perspective. And I mean, hopefully he left being like, okay, some of my trans beliefs that's not fair. Or like, I hope he did leave because and with my name being inclusion starts now, I feel like the word inclusion gets misused a lot. And I'm constantly having to re-explain what inclusion means to me because I mean, that is language. Language is
Yeah.
part of it is our own perspective on it. And um, so it's a lot of conversations and understanding other people. But I think in the end, it's that I'm constantly trying to bring people's perspectives around to like, you don't have to agree with it to find a way to like have everyone a part of it. Um, like, you don't have to date a person who's trans. Like you don't have to get like you don't have to understand why a person identifies as transgender to like let them play volleyball on the team that they feel comfortable playing volleyball on. Um, which again, I'm sure we can talk for literally hours about this. So we should probably
But
get to the cat tarot card reading. You say what you want to
yes.
say while I get
No,
the
no,
cat
no, no, no.
tarot cards out.
If I go with that thought, this is going to go on another half hour. All right. So how do we do this cat card thing?
Okay, so you could give me a question and it kind of like a yes or like an open-ended question, or I could just pick one and it could just kind of be about your life right now.
Um, am I emotionally stable enough to take on the podcast commitments I am making in 2025?
Ooh, okay. I felt really good about the card I just landed on. I haven't seen it yet, but do you usually I tell people I shuffle it and then you tell me to stop. So do you want me to
You,
keep shuffling?
you know, go with the one you landed on.
Okay. Hopefully it's not a bad one because then I'm gonna feel really bad.
Oh gosh,
Okay, let's see. We got the
frogs?
two.
Are they frogs?
They are they are frogs and snakes.
That there's a cat
I
card.
know.
I get
Well,
frogs and
it's the two of cups is what it is. Here's my little book of Mystic Cats Tarot. So let's see. Two of cups. And no, no, no. This is the hardest part trying to. Oh, found it, found it. Okay. Okay. Ooh, oh my gosh. So the first words are partnership and unity, which I feel like that totally makes
yep,
sense.
yep.
And it says, cheers to love. This is the beginning of a wonderful partnership. Your thoughts and emotions are reflective of your partners, and you are creating a strong bond. Enjoy this new time of love. Oh my God.
All right.
All your new endeavors sound really good.
Yep,
So that's
absolutely.
great.
Yep, it's going. It's
That's
going. It's
probably the most
happening.
positive card I've ever pulled. That's exciting.
Most positive card from the most negative guest. I love it. But
Oh
yes,
my gosh.
I'm Wes of Disabled Land, Wes Harkness. You can find me on Instagram for now, at least, as Wes underscore of underscore disabled land. If you just search disabled land, you'll find me. I am making my main home now on Blue Sky, just as disabled land, and have a second social for a podcast that I am starting called The 35th Floor. The socials are up for that. The podcast has not started recording yet. And yeah, don't make me right. Make
I
me wrong,
I like
please.
that.
Make Wes wrong again, America. There. Put it on a hat.
I was gonna say I'll get a hat. What color do you want it to be?
Anything but red.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Wes, so much for being here. I'll make sure to have everything in the show notes
Yep.
below. And
Yep.
I'm sure
All
we'll be
right.
talking again soon on each other's podcasts.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Thank you so much for everybody who has listened to our episode. I hope that you were able to take something new from it. And again, I would love to continue this conversation. I know from personal experience that people who voted for Trump did not connect that their vote um, is against minority groups, against the disabled community, against trans youth, or against people who are transgender. Um, so it's just a conversation to keep having so we can learn from each other and understand where we need to keep growing together. Because the more that we feel separated with our two parties, the less growing we're going to do. Um, so again, I really appreciate any feedback or comments because inclusion starts with you, and I just want to help.